What's up guys, Cody from Pink Gorilla here, and today I'm going to show you how to fix a Nintendo, specifically replacing a 72-pin connector. That is the most common issue. If your Nintendo is not reading games, it's probably because it needs a new 72-pin connector. So, first things first, you will need a new 72-pin connector. You can get these online or in-store for $10 to $15. You will need some Q-tips, some alcohol, and a Phillips screwdriver or a drill with a long bit will work. Alright, so let's get started by flipping over the original Nintendo, and you're going to want to take out these 6 screws right here. If you don't have a screw tray, this also functions as a useful one. So let's get started. Alright, after all your screws are out, flip your Nintendo over and just pull right off the top plastic bit. You can just set that aside. We won't be needing it for a while. Next is this metal shell. I believe it's called a heat shield. You will need to remove 7 screws from it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. So let's get those. Alright, so when you remove the heat shield, just lift this side a little bit and slide inward, because part of the metal is under this part of metal and you don't want to bump it around. Okay, next up we're going to remove these 6 screws on the cartridge housing. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright, and at this point I'd like to show you something. So all of the screws on the Nintendo are about the same, except these 2 right here on the inner bit. They are just a little bit longer. So make note of that when you're putting it back together. You're going to need the longer screws in the right spot. So, got 2 more screws to remove, and then we're all done with screws until we put it back together. And those 2 are right here. So go ahead and grab those out. Okay, so now we're going to want to lift our board just a little bit and pull out the cartridge housing. You can just grab right here and it should slip out pretty easy. You might have to shake it a little bit, but there you go. Set that aside. And now we're down to what we came to work on, the 72-pin connector. So lift the board out of the bottom metal tray by grabbing the 72-pin connector and just lifting like that. And now remove the 72-pin connector by just sliding it right off the board. Now, I like to just throw this away immediately because once in a while you can get confused with the new one and the old one after it's out of the bag. So just get the old one out of there. You don't need it anymore. But before we put the new one on, it's a very good idea to clean all of these pins right here, the bottom and the top. So take your alcohol and your Q-tips and scrub at them for as long as it takes for dirt to stop showing up. Maybe a while. Alright, now that those are all cleaned up, let's take this out of the package and pop in our new 72-pin connector. Now the part you'll want to attach to the board, this is probably pretty obvious, but it's the part with the 2 screw holes. So you really can't put it in a wrong way, but start by attaching the plastic to the bottom of the pin set and slide it in and just push it. But don't be too rough, just enough to let it slide in. Like if you're not making progress, don't try to force it. Alright, next let's put the cartridge housing back on. This is pretty simple, but there is a little extra bit that is a pretty common rookie mistake people make. So on the cartridge housing, there's a little plastic hook right here. Yeah, that's a good angle. You can see that. So that plastic bit needs to be underneath this board here. If it's not, everything's going to be set just a little bit too high. The plastic top won't close. Nothing will work quite right. So let's make sure we get that in when you're putting it together. I just lift the board a little bit on the left, slide it into place with the new 72 pin connector, and just put it probably like 3/4 of the way in. And then stop for a second and make sure that that hook is underneath the board. Cool, it's looking good. So let's pop it back in. And you see those metal prongs? This expansion slot needs to slide into those, or else it's not going to sit right either. So there you go. Good, looks good. Now, before we test it, I always like to add just a couple screws to the cartridge housing so everything's sitting the way it will be sitting when it's all put together and ready to go. So let's just add our long screws, like I mentioned earlier, so we don't forget about those. Take the 2 screws that are longer than any of the other screws and put them right there. That's the bottom hole, not the top one, the bottom one. Alright, after those 2 long screws are in, let's add just 2 more right here. The 2 closest to you, but still part of the cartridge housing. Alright, let's go test this out really quick. Looks good. Alright, now that we're sure that this thing works, it's time to put it all back together. Don't forget your 2 screws at the top of the cartridge housing right here. And don't forget the 2 right over here. Alright, now let's take this metal bit, slide it back underneath this metal piece right here, and you can line it up so that these plastic poles on the Nintendo slide into the metal holes on this metal piece. 7 screws for this one. Alright, now that we got those screws all back in, this should be all good to go. You just need to put the plastic top back on, flip it over, and you should have 6 screws left. Now the reason I'm pointing this out is because there are a lot of screws on the Nintendo. If you're new to this, you may have lost a few. Now the place that you'll want to make up for the lost screws is not here on the outside. You'd want it to probably be here on the inside. If you happen to lose screws for whatever reason, no judgment, I would just not screw in some of this metal piece and try to do it on opposite ends if you lost multiple. But let's make sure that all 6 are here on the outside. Alright, expansion slot / screw tray back in place, and you've got a perfectly working original Nintendo once again. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye-bye.